Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
See You on the Other Side, episode 253. We're going to Haunchyville. All right.
I don't know what that was.
I love it. But before we go to Haunchyville, we just got back from, this is the fourth time we've been to the Haunted America convention.
Yes. Welcome back, Mike.
Welcome back to you, Wendy, in Alton, Illinois.
A nice, smooth 6-hour roll from Madison.
Yes. And it was a lot of fun. We got to play our paranormal songs for everybody on Friday to kick the party off.
Yes, we did. And we have a couple of videos from that we'll be sharing online with our Patreons first, and then with everybody else.
Yes, if we met you for the first time this weekend at Haunted America, welcome to listening to the podcast. We love you.
Yeah, welcome. And it was great meeting all the people at Haunted America. It was fun. I spent probably 95% of the time at our booth, which was great because I got to meet almost everybody who stopped by. And what an awesome group of people.
Yes, I thought everybody was great. My favorite presentations were, number one, our very own Allison delivered a presentation on Saturday morning about possessions and poltergeists in the Midwest. And there was a couple of stories in there that I hadn't heard before.
Yeah, she covered quite a lot of ground in that presentation. I thought it was great, and it seemed to get a stunned reaction from the crowd.
Well, there was a couple of things in there that I hadn't even heard about before. And I was like, oh my God, that terrified me. So
yeah,
that was exciting. So she did a great job. That was her first time presenting there. And then I also got to catch Troy Taylor. He's the guy that runs the whole thing. And he did a presentation on Charles Manson and the Manson family murders, Helter Skelter. And, I learned a few things from there that I hadn't known before about Charles Manson and the Beach Boys and everything. So his new book is The Song of Dance and Death. And, well, we're going to have him on the podcast to talk about that soon.
Definitely. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see many of the presentations due to holding down the booth.
Yes.
But it was fun. Our booth was over right next to the American Hauntings podcast and the Ghostly Talk podcast.
Yes.
So we were like in podcast corner there, which was really fun. But one thing that was interesting this year, I thought, about Haunted America was the big announcement that Haunted America is no longer just about ghosts.
Oh, yeah. Welcomes UFOs and things like that.
Yeah. He, Troy, in his opening speech, said that with everything going on with all the high strangeness topic, it's too nebulous to just separate ghosts out. So we're welcoming in some of the other fringe topics, which is exciting to me because it's always been strictly about hauntings. And I think that's going to change things a bit.
Yeah. And so that was a lot of fun. And anyway, if we met you this weekend, thank you so much. Make sure you leave a review on iTunes because that really helps us out and lets more people know about that. So you can go to iTunes and all you have to do, just leave a 5-star review along with saying something nice and we will read that review on the podcast.
Yes.
So every
Cheers.
single one. So just wanted to say it was awesome meeting you guys, and we can't wait to see you again, maybe at Haunted America, maybe at one of the other conventions, or maybe at a Sunspot Live show somewhere in your area. But today we want to talk about a scary place near where Wendy and I grew up.
So spooky.
Yes, and it's a scary place in the suburbs of Milwaukee that also has a crazy local legend. So it's not only scary because of the area, it's scary because of the local legend. And Muskego, Wisconsin is about five minutes away from my parents' house. And so when we go to high school and things like that, I would have friends who would work in Muskego. Now, Wendy, you were from the north part of the city, so did you ever get down to Muskego very much?
I don't think I ever got down to Muskego until I met you and Ben.
All right. So you never had a chance to get down there. But
no, I just heard the rumors about it.
So now, Muskego, it's got it's a beautiful lake there, and there even was a amusement park in Muskego called Muskego Beach. That ran for decades, and then in the 1970s was changed to Dandelion Park. And
It's lazy. They just didn't want to have to deal with the groundskeeping.
right.
No, they're there on purpose, all those dandelions.
So after World War II, you'd have a roller coaster, a merry-go-round. They had a little train that ran through the amusement park. And the Ferris wheel, sadly, in 1974, an 11-year-old boy fell from the Ferris wheel and died.
Oh, God.
That's not just a urban legend or whatever. That's actually in the newspaper as happening. Milwaukee Sentinel has an article about it. There was a cemetery next to Muskego Beach that eventually they had to move all the bodies to different cemeteries, and then they paved over that and created a parking lot. So the reason that teenagers knew about Muskego, which is a tiny town, just a couple of thousand people, it was because of this amusement park. And, people would go to it all the time. And this is the baby boomer era. This is like the late 1940s to, the mid 1970s is when this is open. The park eventually closes in 1977. There's just, abandoned Ferris wheel and roller coaster stuff there for about a decade. And then in the 80s, eventually it all gets demolished and stuff. But the ruins of Muskego Beach were a place where the teenagers would go and stuff. And so that's in one part of the lake. And in the other part of the lake, you had this area at the end of what was called Mystic Road. Now, first of all, the name is Mystic Road. So that's pretty cool right there.
It's enticing in and of itself.
It's like, oh, Mystic Road. What does that mean?
Why was it named that?
And the rumors about Mystic Road, and this is as I heard it from my friend who worked at a place called Williams Supper Club in Muskego, and he was like a dishwasher there. And we'd always like to go to haunted places when we were kids. We'd always, go to the scariest places. And this is before we didn't have any equipment. They didn't have EMF meters or everything. We just would go there and be like, we want to see a ghost or we want to see something weird. Sometimes we bring a Ouija board or whatever. And, I'd never heard the legend before until my friend who worked in Muskego, he comes to me one day. He's like, hey, I heard this place. It's called Mystic Road. And my friends told me that at the end of it, there's supposed to be a community of little people. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. Like they used to be circus dwarves and they revolted against their ringleader and they live back there. And the rumor is that they killed one of the local farmers and people found him. People found the farmer hanging in his barn. And there was a message written on blood on the side of the wall that said, "The Haunchies made me do it. The Haunchies made me do it." And there were little footprints, like child footprints, going away, from the hanging body. And he's like, "Yeah, and if you come down there, supposedly they'll chase you off." I'm like, "Well,
obviously you have to go.
We better go to Haunchyville."
Right.
And, and this is back in the 90s. So, like, today, Haunchyville has a review on Yelp. You know what I mean? Like, somebody
hilarious.
Put the location into Yelp where they put the urban legend and stuff like that.
Were they angry about the service there?
Yes. They were mad about it. So, but this is the day, like, okay, we got to figure out where Mystic Road is. So, you get the map out and everything like that. Okay, here's the map of Muskego. Here's Mystic Road. And as you drove down there, it was all cornfields. There's some houses in the back and everything. We get to of course, there's a no trespassing sign.
Of course.
And you see the no trespassing sign. And you're like, well, that's not for paranormal adventurers. So that's not for us. So let's not sweat it. And then we drive in. And you drive in, like park on the side of the road, and you start walking down the road into the cornfields, and let's see if we can see one of those houses or anything. And you could see some sheds in the, sheds like near the houses and the barns and everything. But I really wanted to see the barn where they said the guy was hanged, because the rumor was that sometimes you could still see the ghostly silhouette of the farmer hanging in the barn. I'm like, well, first of all, we got to see if this, if this circus midget town is real. Then we got to see the barn, and we got to see if we can see the guy hanging in the barn.
Right.
And so we weren't drinking beer or anything like that. Like we like really wanted a paranormal experience. It just wasn't a place to go out to and get scared. Like we went in there, and that's why I was saying like, the trespassing sign, that's for the non-scientists.
Right.
You know, that's what the kids are going to drink and party there. And like, we weren't going to party anywhere with the chance of getting us arrested. So like, we're here for a paranormal experience. And so I went there with my friend who was working at the, who worked at the restaurant. And then we went with my other friend, Nick, and he's like 6'5" or something like that. So he's a pretty big guy. I'm like, maybe they'll go after the tall guy first.
Nice.
Like, so if we do find the Haunchy's,
he draws the attention most.
Maybe they'll go after him. And, and this is funny because as we get down there, we do see some sheds. We do see a bar, no ghostly, unfortunately, I mean, we got about half mile in down Mystic Road and there's no ghostly silhouette or anything like that. I don't see any tiny footprints. But we do hear like a crazy bird scream.
Ooh, like a pterodactyl?
Yeah, I mean, it probably was just an owl or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was an owl, but whatever it was like a, wow. And it sounded like a monster.
Scary.
And it was super loud. And so I'm not proud to admit that I just ran.
It's okay.
Like I heard that and I'm like, bye. And like even my friend Nick, the tall guy, was like, dude, you like abandoned me out to die out there. I'm like, you're right. I did. I ran. Because I was the fastest guy among that bunch. And I'm like, I'm out of here. And so I ran back to the car. And our only experience was that crazy. I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been somebody like trying to scare us too, like who lived down there.
That'd be a good way to get kids off the property, Instead of using the traditional like gunfire dogs barking, just have like a really unique, terrifying sound.
And so that was the legend as we heard it. And so we went down to investigate, what's down Mystic Road? And now we didn't see any tiny houses and we didn't see any Haunchy's. But, I mean, other people have said they've seen things. And the rumors and legends of Haunchyville, starting out in the 1950s, Muskego is a popular place for teenagers to go to, kind of thing. So then, they look out and what's the other side of the lake? What's over there? I wonder. And that's the kind of thing. And so then this becomes this rumor of this strange community of little people. And the different rumors, I think, make it more interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Because to me, it's like, okay, I was really interested because of the farmer and the ghost of the, First of all, the first time I heard that the Haunchy's made me do it, there's that terror
oh my
of
gosh.
like, how could they make you kill yourself? Like, can the Haunchy's control your mind?
And the fact that would be the last thing you would do before ending it all is to scrawl that on the. I mean, that's terrible.
In your own blood.
Yeah.
So the other reports of the other legends are, number one, that the farmer. What he did is like he discovered the Haunchy's. So there was there was a circus dwarfs that lived there, but they had like an underground city, or they lived underground or something was another rumor. And the reason the farmer found them is that he pulled out an old stump, like an old tree stump, and then he discovered their like subterranean enclave. And because he discovered that, they followed him, they hanged him, they cut off his arms and his legs. So the rumor gets even more gruesome that the guy wasn't just found hanging. They cut off his arms and his legs first. They cut him down to size.
That's horrific.
That's the kind of thing. And there also was the rumor of the old albino man that lives on Mystic Drive. He waits at the end of it with a shotgun to ward off anyone trying to cause troubles. The idea is that he felt like he was an outcast too, as an albino. And he met the little people as a child, and since he treated them as equals, because he felt like an outcast too, they sheltered him and they raised him as one of their own. And so, as he grew up, he becomes the protector of Haunchyville. Same with the shotgun. There's a rumor that they throw rocks at you. Like you come out there, the Haunchy's would come out and people. That's rocks would be thrown at you to go away and get away.
Which seems to be the number one defense method of like supernatural sites.
right? That somebody's just going to toss rocks at you.
And anytime you're nosing around where you don't belong, you're going to have rocks thrown at you.
Yeah. And then there's also if the Haunchies catch you or whatever, they'll cut you down, from your knees. They'll cut your legs off from your knees down. So then you're forced to live as a little person yourself. So they cut you down to size. And that actually became the inspiration of a couple issues of The Punisher comic book. And so Garth Ennis he's the guy that developed the Preacher comic, which is now a TV show. It's on AMC. And that's kind of the Preacher comic is kind of what launched him to fame. And that's got a lot of paranormal in it. And when he was working on The Punisher, he based, part of it on Haunchyville, in that the bad guys were a group of little people who formed their own kind of mafia, and they cut off their rival mobsters' legs from the knees down.
Oh, gosh.
And it's just like the Haunchyville residents supposedly did the trespassers. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny that this guy from, Northern Ireland or whatever uses this obscure Wisconsin urban legend as the basis for the bad guys, in one of his issues.
Yeah.
And so, I really did not think that a lot of people outside of Muskego knew what Haunchyville was until Weird Wisconsin came out.
Okay.
And so Weird Wisconsin comes out, and you find out that all these kind of people are sending messages to Linda Godfrey and Richard Hendricks, who worked on Weird Wisconsin.
And how long ago did that come out?
The book came out in 2005.
Okay.
But there was a website beforehand. And I even wrote to them about Haunchyville, back in the late 90s, when Weird Wisconsin was just a website. And so, you find out other people all over the greater Milwaukee area had their version of the story. And so sometimes it's not a village of little people, but it's a farm being worked by a bunch of midgets who'd retired from show business.
Always.
Yeah. And so, that's the thing. It's always like the retired circus midgets, because how else would they all meet and stuff?
Right.
So there's supposed to be tiny houses, like tiny houses with smaller doors. They said that the stop signs on Mystic Drive are waist high.
You could verify that, right?
Right. And I did not see waist high stop signs. That's the kind of thing, after a rainstorm or whatever, maybe one of the stop signs sinks, or maybe, a little bit. But
somebody saw it once and it became fact.
Right. There's also, in the 1960s, they hear about the story of the same thing. It's the group of circus dwarfs, and they're living in the cornfields or whatever, and you get a teenage couple who park their car in the cornfields to make out, and they're attacked by little creatures that leave scratch marks on the roof of the car. And then the teenagers are found dead inside the car. So, okay. You're right there too. So there's combining more than one urban legend, the hook for a hand or whatever guy that comes out and kills the people in the car. Now we have little people doing it. So urban legends combining with each other. It's okay, here's a community of little people, and now they're killing teenagers who go out to make out. So the thing is, you go out to investigate it, and so what happens is the police then, they get involved because they got to go out and give parking tickets. Or I'm sorry, they got to give trespassing tickets.
And parking tickets too, I'm sure.
And parking tickets too, if you're making out. One officer says, he's like, most Muskego kids know it's a myth. Kids from the surrounding areas continue to go down there, and it drives the homeowners nuts. And this is an interview with Patch.com in 2011. He's like, but the point we want to drive home is there are no little people there, no axe murders. Just nice tax-paying people who want to live in peace. If we catch you, you're going to get a ticket. And number one, it's a $276 ticket. Ooh. And he was working with the police department for 29 years, and he's given out hundreds of tickets for trespassing on Mystic Drive. But the funny thing is, he's like, there's no little people there, and no axe murders. What axe murder?
Right, who asked you about that?
Right? What are you covering up, Lieutenant Dave Constantino of the Muskego Police Department, the head of the Muskego Police Department of Disinformation? But, that hasn't stopped, people still going down there, even though it's kind of developed now. So it's not really you go down there and it's not as a scary cornfield. There's all houses. So
they paved paradise.
Right. They bulldozed the Haunchies right out of there. So the one thing that urban legends can't withstand is right, the march of progress, right? And they can't withstand people trying to make a buck. But, one girl is quoted as she investigated it, and she's quoted in the Marquette Wire to say, she went with her friends one time when she was in high school. And this is someone who's being interviewed in like 2011. So she's in high school in the 2000s when she goes out. And she goes, "We scared ourselves silly there. We went once and we were pretty much crying. But we went back and everything is little." Now, I didn't see this, but this is what she says. The houses were regular size, but the front doors were smaller, and so were the mailboxes. Every single house had its light on. It looked like a community for little people, but we didn't see anyone. And it's Nora Pilak, quoted in the Marquette Wire. And I'm like, I didn't see that stuff. Maybe I had to go further down.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if the location is not that easy to find, or...
Yeah. But the thing is, the houses were regular size, but the front doors were smaller, and so were the mailboxes. To me, that sounds like that's what you expect to see.
Totally.
The kind of thing.
Seeing what you want to see.
Right. But maybe I was too frightened by the pterodactyl scream before I got down there. Like, what's up?
Oh my gosh.
Holy crap. And then I'm like, bye. And, some of the reasons that people think that they started the legend of Haunchyville was that there was a distillery and a liquor operation there during Prohibition. And so they started a rumor about that group of little people in order to scare people off and make people not want to go there. Even though that seems to me to be kind of dumb, because every time you start an urban legend or whatever, it seems like people want to investigate it. So that's a reason for it. That would be a reason to attract more attention.
It seems like you'd want to, if you're going to start the rumor, lead the people to a different place other than your residence.
Right.
Like, over there in the swamp, there's something weird going on.
Yep, you're gonna want to check that out, and definitely not here where we're making rum or whatever.
Right.
And it's funny the way people kind of spread it on too, especially when you get to the internet. Because like Marquette University, they have a television program. And so Marquette University even had like a parody of a guy that survived Haunchyville. And so he has this video, and they have him, just the silhouette and the voice disguised and everything. And he's like, "Here's what I saw when I went to Haunchyville." And it's all real. And, this is they make it as a parody, as a joke. But then people come on in the YouTube comments, and some people are like, "No, this is a parody. It's not real." Other people are like, "Oh my God, I want to go there now. I want to check it out." And then other people come in and be like, "Don't go there. It's not worth it. It's real, all right. It's not funny. And, you never, ever want to go there." So there's people coming in telling you it's real.
And those are the residents of the neighborhood there, probably.
Right. You have people on online forums, and they're having conversations, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, I heard this story about Haunchyville. Have you guys ever heard anything about it?" And most of the people are like me. They're like, "Yeah, I checked it out when I was a teenager, and I didn't see anything weird. Nothing happened." And then somebody jumps in, and it's like, "I lived in the community dubbed as Haunchyville since 1941.
Ooh.
A group of small people organized a co-op style group for living quarters and equipment for farming after the Depression. Yes, we hired a trusted local bachelor to be a watchman and an emissary in dealings with the outside community. Some of us were mean only because of the stories that demeaned us. I now live in Chicago, and I've never talked about my experience outside of those who are still with us. I hope this clears up a lot of misrepresentation for the sake of who are still sensitive about injustice." But then he's like, "There's no point in contacting me. There's nothing more to tell. Please pass this on to your friends. Thank you." And that's a guy that has one post.
Right.
On the entire,
I just came here to say this.
And so you're like, okay, so somebody reading that is going to be like, all right, well, everybody else says it's fake, but this guy's story about the little people co-op for after the Depression and farming, well, that kind of makes sense. That sounds like it makes sense, because then it's almost like, well, if the story started in the 1950s, well, that lines up too. And then, of course, hiring somebody as a watchman who's regular size, that seems to work. And so you see how this spreads even till today, that people, the internet is just like, we think we have this place with a whole bunch of truth. Like you can go on the internet and find the facts on almost anything, but you can also find a ton of disinformation and people purposefully trying to stir things up because they think it's funny.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny. I think it's funny when people go on YouTube and they're like, is this real? And somebody's like, yes, it's real. Haunchyville is real. And it is funny to do that, but it's also like a way you're, spreading stupid urban legends and scaring crap out of the people. And also, here's in the interview with Linda Godfrey in Weird Wisconsin, as one of the residents of Mystic Drive area says, a young boy once asked me if we have seen the Haunchies, and I responded, yeah, we feed them raw meat. And then the terrified boy ran away.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Right. And then in October 2000, they're talking about the Haunchies in the Milwaukee Journal. And then Detective Lieutenant James Budish of the Muskego Police Department. He's talking about the hundreds of tickets. And he's like, when they find Paul Bunyan and Babe, his blue ox, then they might find the Haunchies, he said. I'm not the prince or the king of the Haunchies, so I'm not trying to protect them. There are only one or two guys in this department who are actually short enough to be considered real Haunchies. So it's funny that the police department, like he's trying to make a joke or whatever, and it just sounds like, what? I'm not the prince or king of the Haunchies?
Right.
Like, what does that mean? Like maybe just say like the other guy better when he's like, did it better when he's like, there are no Haunchies, there are no axe murders.
Right. Well, it sounds like they've probably heard every version of the legend that there is,
Right.
So they're probably like, we're not this, we're not that. Or they know something we don't.
And that's probably why he's connecting to the protector or whatever. Like, I'm not the protector. I'm not the prince of the Haunchies. I'm just the guy that gives you a ticket if you go down there in the trespassing.
Right.
So, obviously, Haunchyville is kind of a ridiculous story. There's even the Bass Bay Brew House,
which we have to visit.
We do now have to visit there in Muskego because I think they make their own beer, so we're going to have to drink that. No, it's just all Wisconsin taps and bottles, and it's local ingredients. It's a former supper club. I don't believe it's the same. It's not the same supper club that my friend used to work at, but they do have a Angry Haunchy burger.
All right, bring it on.
Okay. So the Angry Haunchy has chipotle mayo, roasted poblano queso, chili, Fritos, and sour cream. So that's what kind of that burger it is. So you can order the Angry Haunchy when you go.
And then you can eat it.
Yeah, and then when you go to the Bass Bay Brew House, you can get that. And I think they call it angry because it's got a little spicy stuff in it. So the poblano queso obviously is spicy. The Fritos, so it's a crunchy, it's one of those crunchy burgers, whatever, and the chili. So I just thought it was funny that the Haunchy is well known enough that it gets its own burger at a restaurant in Muskego. And, the internet does change things in a way because when we were kids, you'd have to spread it by talking about it.
Right.
So, it wasn't written up anywhere. The first time I heard anyone else even talking about it was on the Weird Wisconsin website in the late 90s.
Wow.
After we'd already gone there. And, so like Allison, my sister, she grew up in the same place, and her friends and stuff, they would always talk about weird things. She's like, oh, I never heard that before I went out there. But the fact is, like, we had to spread it. So if you didn't know somebody who worked in Muskego or whatever, or he had to spread it to him, that guy had to spread it to me. Then when I came to Madison, I would tell people stories like, oh yeah, well, we used to have Haunchyville.
Yeah, you told all of us on the dorm floor about it.
Right. And so it's just that funny kind of thing that, now things can spread, and Haunchyville can have a Yelp location where somebody reviews it and other people check into it under their local flavor section. And you just think about how rumors used to spread, and the internet gives you a whole new way of spreading this information, even if the real story is like two clicks away. So the thing about Haunchyville, though, is that it definitely was not the only game in town when it came to a community of little people, and that being a rumor. I believe we talked about this before. Is that they had the same kind of thing even in San Antonio, Texas. We had our friend Vic told us about his, when he went to the midget mansion, or whatever they called it in San Antonio. And once again, we have that story of Now, this one is that one of the rumors is that it was a little person who had made it big in The Wizard of Oz or whatever, and he made it big in the circus, he made it big in Hollywood. Either way, he retires, buys a mansion in San Antonio, and then he has a little person wife, regular-sized children, but then he hires all regular-size, like, servants, and he treats them horribly as, like, revenge for how he was treated as a little person in Hollywood. And eventually, one of the servants goes crazy and kills the family or burns the house. I mean, there's different ways that the legend goes. She either burns the house down or she kills the family, but she's sick of being mistreated.
Either way, it's very violent.
Yes, it ends violently. And the thing is, this was, it's been raised over now, and there's it was a real mansion in San Antonio. And it's like a Lowe's to, Home Depot kind of thing now.
Can't investigate anymore.
Right. It was an abandoned, beautiful house for a long time. Like in the 1970s and 1980s, that's where kids would go. It was like Mystic Drive. It's a place where kids would go drink beer and have ghost stories and weird things happen. And they'd go, and that's the kind of kids that I was like, those are the ones you don't want trespassing. I didn't consider what we did trespassing because I'm like, well, we're on a mission. And obviously the police don't care if we're on a mission or not.
Right.
They would love to give me a ticket. So, you have that story in San Antonio. And then you also have other locations around the country where people talk about this community. It's always the same thing. It's like, dwarves leave the circus and then they go form their own community somewhere. And they call them like midgetvilles.
That's politically correct.
Right. Well, I mean, like midgets is more of it's a derogatory term because like dwarves are humans, dwarfism is a thing, but there is no midgetism or anything like that. So it's like a word just made up for this kind of thing. So it comes off as derogatory, and that's why these circus dwarf homes. There's a place called Tiny Town near Cincinnati. Like a ranch where people said that they used to see like little people, and then if you came near Tiny Town, they throw rocks at you.
Again,
that's not right. Right, they're always throwing rocks at you, and so there's that. And that one, that's the one when they have like a little train.
Ah, okay.
I think people saw the little train, and that's another like former amusement park kind of deal that eventually became. So there's stuff built for kids because it was an amusement park, and then people see those abandoned houses or little trains or things, and that's what makes them think, oh yeah, this is a community of little people. And then teenagers go out there in the middle of the night, they see something, maybe they hear a pterodactyl scream, and they rush back to their friends and tell them what kind of crazy stuff they saw. So it's those kind of things. Tiny Town near Cincinnati. There was Jefferson Township, New Jersey, where there actually is some houses that are smaller. But then people also had that there's the vengeful group of little people there waiting to get back at you.
Yeah.
If you're a big person, or not, I mean a regular sized person, or a big person like my friend Nick, a giant. Well, and speaking of, we were just in the land of the giant in Alton, Illinois. Robert Wadlow was the tallest human ever recorded at over 9 feet tall. And it's funny that, there's an awesome statue of him, like life-size statue of him downtown in Alton. That's really cool. But then there's like little like cardboard cutouts of him at
everywhere.
Like, these places, everywhere. So like Robert Wadlow, he's inescapable.
That's cute. He's like the he's like the mascot for Alton.
Yeah, and it's funny because we were talking about the Haunchies last week in a place called the Wisconsin Dells, and I gave a presentation on this. And then later on, we had a ghost investigation, a ghost hunt at the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. And then right in the front of the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Wisconsin Dells, they have a full-size statue of Robert Wadlow, the tallest man in the world. And so you can stand next to it, get your picture taken and everything. And it just makes me laugh because it's like I felt like, man, I've been surrounded by Robert Wadlow lately. Like he's a member of my
He's
family.
everywhere you go.
Everywhere I go is this huge man. So also there's a La Linda in Long Beach, California. There was a rumored community of little people that they said all worked on The Wizard of Oz. And once again, here's The Wizard of Oz. And because this is such a popular movie, I mean, it's an insanely popular film, right? Wizard of Oz, everybody's seen it. Maybe with Dark Side of the Moon, maybe not. But it's the largest group of little people ever put together at the same time, up until that point. I don't know if George Lucas maybe used more people on Return of the Jedi for the Ewoks and stuff. But so this is the largest group of little people ever put together to make this film. It's all these stories then end up like, oh yeah, well, they got famous and got rich from, being in the Munchkin land of the Wizard of Oz. And so once they made it big in Hollywood, they had success now, and they wanted to get back at the regular sized people any way they could. And so it's just ridiculous things like that. And so you find out that the Haunchies, they combined a couple of different, urban legends. The killer out in the cornfields, and they add that to the circus dwarf community. And then adding on top of that, you have the hanging of the farmer, and the murder of the farmer, and the strange protector, and all those kind of things. And you see that all the urban legends kind of just jump on top of each other to form something different and for people to talk about. And then you think well, why are we so fascinated with circus dwarves? Like that idea of what makes people what makes it so scary to people, that it's this easy kind of narrative to say that, all right, well, little people must have a chip on their shoulder because, they don't have the same opportunities, or their life is harder, or they get made fun of, from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And that almost, that feels like a very high school kind of thing.
It does.
Because a lot of high schoolers have chips on their shoulder. And so they understand.
Right. And it's an age where it's all about belonging, and a lot of times that means excluding people who don't belong. So it fits in with that.
And it almost it makes it easy to exoticize little people and dwarves and things like that. And you find these kind of legends even in different parts of Wisconsin. And so there's a magazine called Fate magazine. I don't know if you guys have ever read it, that collects people's stories. And they've been collecting people's stories for, almost 1947 was the first issue. So Fate's like the OG, paranormal magazine, or true life paranormal magazine. So Fate magazine would collect these stories. And there's two interesting stories from Wisconsin specifically about seeing little people. One comes from Barron County. So Barron County is far north Wisconsin. So it's close to the Minnesota border, and it's a couple hour or maybe an hour north of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And so Barron County, 1919, you get Harry Anderson, not Harry Anderson from Night Court.
It'd be great if it was him.
It was, because, he's 13 years old, and he goes on a drive with his father from Eau Claire. And, cars are still relatively new at that point and everything. So, let's go out on a joyride. So he goes out with his dad, and then what happens is they run out of gas. And so the dad sends Harry off to the nearest farm.
As you do, send the kid off into the dark.
As you do. You're 13, it's dark. What I want you to do is go find me some gas. I'm going to be here drinking. Don't worry about it, boy. So he sends Harry off, and as Harry's walking by the farm, he sees 20 bald little people walking down the road. And 20 of them walking single file, they're bald. They're all wearing white knee socks. All right. But they're walking down the road, and then he jumps into the cornfield, and they walk by him, and they're singing a song. And the words of the song are, "We won't stop fighting till the end of the war in 1994. Sound off, 1, 2, sound off, 3, 4, detail, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
The clapper.
Right, the clapper. And so they do, he sees it, and he tells people that that's what he saw. And so is that some kind of, 1919, we're just at the end of the greatest war ever fought. It wasn't great.
Right.
But the biggest war ever fought, World War I, millions of people dying. So is he having some kind of hallucination or nightmare? Because he's thinking about another war. And the people are marching in a military fashion. Obviously, the sound off, 1, 2, sound off. It's just the same thing that they say to soldiers while they're marching. But why is it bald little people wearing white socks?
That's so unusual.
Right? So there's that. In 1973, now this is also the western side of Wisconsin, Trempealeau Mountain. This is not super far away from Barron County, maybe an hour and a half. Trempealeau, I used to have to go out to Trempealeau to shoot news stories when I worked at the TV station in La Crosse. And in fact, their high school was Galesville Ettrick Trempealeau High School. And so you would abbreviate that when we were working on a news story. We had to shoot somebody at the high school or talking to somebody who worked at the high school. We'd abbreviate that in the lower third when you talk to the person as GET High.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it was great. You always had a good laugh when you're like, oh, no, we got somebody from the high school.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I bet those students love that, too.
It did, right? We were just as immature as the students were in talking to the kids from Get High. But there's a guy named Frank Banner, and he talks about going on a dog walk on Trempealeau Mountain, and he says that he met a tribe of 2-foot-tall people dressed in primitive clothes. So that's probably why he describes it as a tribe, because they were dressed up in what he just as Stone Age clothing. And he's freaked out, but his dog greets them like they're buddies. So like the dog gets all excited and like runs to him and things like that, like they're friends. And Frank freaks out about it. And eventually they go away, and he like runs off home or whatever and tells people that he met a tribe of 2-foot humans.
Wow.
So that's that. Just a little idea of, those are people who've actually claimed to see something. Now, in Haunchyville, nobody actually ever said they saw the Haunchies. Like when you look at the reports, they're like, I did see small houses, or somebody threw, I did see rocks at me or whatever. But nobody's like, man, the Haunchies came out. I mean, people will say that like in the online trolls or whatever. Like they came out, it was terrifying. They tried to cut my knees off or whatever.
But there isn't like a description or like a police profile drawing of what they actually look like.
Right. Like Frank Banner, like he told Fate Magazine, this is what I saw. Harry Anderson, told people for a long time that's the strange things I saw. And that reminds me, there is in the Great Lakes Native Americans, they do have stories of a group called the Memigwesi, who are small, hairy water spirits. And of course, what they love to do is throw rocks. So, it's this idea of little people that live by water, kind of like the Haunchies living by Muskego Lake. Yeah. And it's a group of little people that live by water, but they're not, they're supposed to be actual spirits. They're more like fairies than this idea of like circus dwarfs.
Yeah.
And of course, the Memigwesi can only be seen by children and animals. So that's, what I think is interesting there is it just makes me think of that Frank Banner's story when the dog comes up to greet them.
Yeah. Interesting.
Makes you think like, all right, well, you love when like little things like that combine to make it more interesting.
Right.
But it's this idea that little people have always been considered almost used as props in a way. And so when we think about our fascination with them, and like teenagers' fascination with this, exclusionary group, ancient Egyptians thought little people were closer to God. They would give them powerful spots in the court. And that continues into the royal courts of Europe in the medieval times. You think of the fool or the jester.
Yeah.
Especially in Spain, that was a thing. There's even like looking at a picture of one of the queens of Spain, and she's got like a little person next to her that she's like rubbing her head. And so they'd keep somebody, in the court because they thought they were touched. They thought they were special. They thought they were, closer to God. And I mean, our fascination continues with like circus dwarves being a thing, right? Like
Well, it's more like disenchanted circus dwarves. Like,
right. But these traveling circuses become super popular in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. They're traveling all across the country. There's several circuses going. In Wisconsin, we've talked about Baraboo before. And so Baraboo, Wisconsin becomes like the winter home of the Ringling Brothers Circus is then centered in Wisconsin. And they have a mansion in Baraboo, the Al Ringling Mansion. And, people have stories of ghost elephants and everything and weird things. But this is where the circus would winter. And so everybody from the sideshow, the dwarves and everything like that, would be in Baraboo, which is Baraboo's like a half an hour away from Madison. So it's pretty close to where Wendy and I are right now. But the most famous of the little people that performed in the circus is General Tom Thumb. And he's like P.T. Barnum's right-hand man.
Ah, okay.
And he performs for Queen Victoria twice. He tours with, P.T. Barnum all over they toured all over and became world famous. And he was part of that, like the circus dwarf thing. And he's even in Milwaukee in 1883. There's a fire at a hotel. And it's the worst hotel fire in American history at that point. It kills 71 people. The Newhall House is the name of it. And General Tom Thumb's actually in Milwaukee during that fire, and he's saved by a firefighter. And that's in the story. Like the firefighter was able to grab him with like one hand, like he had to.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and like he had to stand outside his room window or whatever, while the rest of the hotel's in flames. 71 people die, and there's still a ton of stories in the hotel. It's the Hilton Garden Inn in Milwaukee stands at that, and you can see the burn marks on the nearby building still.
Wow.
And we'll talk about the Newhall House on a later episode because Allison and I did an investigation there one night, and we got some really cool stories from the people that worked there. But, you think like, all right, well, the people in the 19th century were not quite as enlightened as us. Right? In our woke age, we're not even going to use the word midget anymore or anything like that because, we're better than that. But think about Poltergeist. Think about Time Bandits.
Yeah.
David Lynch's The Man from Another Place in Twin Peaks, right? The little guy dancing. He uses little people as now we're going to get surreal.
Yeah.
And it's like a shorthand, a visual shorthand for surreal. In fact, there's a movie called Living in Oblivion, and it's about like independent filmmaking in the 1990s. And there's a scene where the director wants to make a dream sequence. He wants to make it surreal, so he brings in a dwarf, and the dwarf played by Peter Dinklage, Tyrion from Game of Thrones. And Peter Dinklage is like, get out of here. He's like, I'm sick of everybody using dwarfs he's like, we're not surreal, we're not crazy, we're not magical, we're not anything. And so Living in Oblivion was the first time I was like, okay, this is great, because I had to review it for the student newspaper or whatever.
Okay.
And so that was the first time I was like, okay, finally somebody's calling out the fact that that even in our more enlightened PC age, we're still like using little people as a shorthand,
right,
for real magic, things like that. Like they're not elves, just regular dudes, they're just small. And I just thought that was a great example of that. The hobbits are magic, in Lord of the Rings and stuff. And so we just have that kind of fascination with the group and, urban legends, and they kind of get tossed in there with urban legends. And, it's like mini-me in the Austin Powers too, like
right.
the exoticization of the other, where, and we've been looking at a quote from the article from the Mirror in like 2009, and it's Mini-Me's girl, or Vern Troyer, the guy that played Mini-Me, like his girlfriend. And she's like, he was sex obsessed. He treated me like a slave, all that kind of stuff. And it's this idea of, it's the same as the imp from Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. It's like this idea of, people have that stereotype of dwarves as, angry, drunk, sex obsessed. There's stories from the Wizard of Oz, like there's urban legends about that the Munchkins had like an orgy on set and things like that. And you're like, what? Get out of here.
Yeah.
And so it's just all those things kind of combine into each other, and urban legends can be, fascinating and fun to investigate and stuff like that. But they also can be silly and promote harmful stereotypes. So I am here to stand up for the Haunchies and say, number one, they do not exist. And number two, I've met people that have worked in sideshows and everything like that, and they're the exact opposite of angry and bitter. So we don't have to worry about it. So we'd love to hear more about any urban legends in your area that you may have investigated and anything like that, because it's always fun to see people from all across the country and the different kind of stuff that they've explored and the legends in their town. So if you have anything like Haunchyville or whatever, please, you can tweet at us at Other Side Talk, or you can send a message to info@othersidepodcast.com. Send us an email and let us know about the urban legends in your town, because we'd love to talk a little bit more about that, just like we talk about the stuff that we've investigated in our own backyard of southeastern Wisconsin. So for the song this week, well, you just got to talk about the Haunchies.
Of course.
So here's Sunspot with Haunchyville.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Mike.
Yes.
Last weekend was awesome.
It was.
We got to meet another one of our Patreon members and hang out with her.
That's right.
Chelsea,
thanks. Nice meeting you in Alton, Illinois.
Yes, and we got to see her at Haunted America again, which is where we originally met her in person. So
yes, I think so.
So much fun.
Either way, we love meeting our Patreons in person, hanging out, talking about it. Like that really is a special experience for us. So we would love for you guys to join our Patreon community.
And we recognize that we can't meet everybody in person. Well, maybe someday. But for now, we will hang out with you and meet you online in the See You on the Other Side Patreon hangouts that we have every month.
Right. And so we love to talk about horror movies, investigations, paranormal experiences. It's really a catch-all of weird stuff. And we talk to everybody every month, hang out, get ideas for podcasts. And also we have a Facebook discussion group where we'll try to do live videos when we're at events and things like that. And just a chance to get to know everybody a little better and go get more direction about the things we should talk about on See You on the Other Side. And so if you're interested in joining that group of awesome people and brilliant, really, people.
Very.
It's othersidepodcast.com/donate is the place where you can come and be part of the See You on the Other Side Patreon community. And Dr. Ned is at the level where we give him a shout out in every single episode.
Yay, Ned.
So Ned, thank you very much for your support. It is 100,000 times appreciated.
Thank you, Ned.
All of our Patreons, we love you guys and can't wait to talk to you in the next Hangout. And everybody else, join us, othersidepodcast.com/donate, and join our growing community of people that love talking about rock and roll, weird stuff, horror movies, and the other side. What are you covering up, Lieutenant Dave Constantino of the Muskego Police Department? The head of the Muskego Police Department of Disinformation?